The stars flickered in the vast emptiness of space, cold and distant. Princess Zyra of the Valeri Empire sat inside a dimly lit escape shuttle, her silver-blue skin glowing faintly under the emergency lights. Her heart pounded as she watched the holographic screen in front of her. The message had been sent. A distress call. Her people were in danger. The once great Valeri Empire was on the verge of collapse. A brutal coup had taken place. Her uncle, Regent Malachar, had betrayed the royal family and seized control. The imperial fleet, once loyal to her father, had been turned against its own people. Cities burned, resistance forces were crushed, and those who dared to oppose Malachar were executed without mercy. Zyra had barely escaped. Her royal guards had sacrificed themselves to ensure she reached the shuttle. Now she was alone, drifting in neutral space, sending out a desperate call for help. She had contacted every major galactic faction: the Xelveni, the Kordrath, the Unified Council of Systems. But one by one, the responses came in. "We regret to inform you that we cannot interfere in Valeri internal matters. The situation is unfortunate, but we cannot risk war. Our hands are tied. Princess, we wish you luck. Excuses. Cowardice. No one would help." The Valeri Empire had been powerful once, but now that it was falling, no one wanted to risk their own safety. Zyra clenched her fists. Was this how her people's legacy would end? Then the console beeped. A new message appeared on the screen. "I got your message. Where are you?" Zyra's breath caught in her throat. Someone had answered. She quickly checked the sender's ID. The name was unfamiliar. Ethan Graves. A human. She hesitated. The humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, only recently making their mark among the older, more advanced species. They were often seen as unpredictable, reckless, and too emotional. But right now, she had no other choice. Zyra tapped the console, activating a video connection. A moment later, the screen flickered, and a rough-looking human face appeared. He had short brown hair, a scar running down his left cheek, and sharp green eyes that studied her carefully. He didn't wear a military uniform, just a simple, rugged jacket over a black shirt. "So, you're the princess." His voice was calm but carried a hint of curiosity. "And you are Ethan Graves?" she asked, trying to mask her desperation. "That's me. You needed help. I'm listening." She couldn't believe it. Every great power in the galaxy had ignored her, yet here was a lone human, actually willing to listen. "My people are dying," she said, forcing herself to stay composed. "My uncle has taken control of our empire. He is executing anyone who opposes him. I sent a distress call to every major faction, but no one will help." Ethan leaned back, rubbing his chin. "Yeah, sounds about right. Politicians don't like messy situations. What do you need?" Zyra blinked. You are actually considering this." He shrugged. "You asked for help. I help people when I can. Besides, sounds like your uncle's the kind of guy I don't like." She studied him carefully. He was different from the other leaders she had spoken to. He didn't ask about political risks, personal gain, or alliances. He didn't hesitate. "I need someone to help me take back my home," she said. "But I have no army. No ships. Just myself." Ethan smirked. "Well, lucky for you. I've pulled off impossible jobs before." Zyra felt a spark of hope. "You have?" "Yeah. The trick is fighting smarter, not harder." For the first time in days, Zyra felt something other than fear. Relief. Maybe, just maybe, she had found the one person in the galaxy who could help her. "Where can I find you?" Ethan asked. She quickly transmitted her location. "All right, princess, sit tight. I'll be there soon." As the screen went dark, Zyra leaned back in her seat, exhaling slowly. She had no idea who Ethan Graves truly was, but one thing was certain: he was her last hope. And hope was enough. The silence of space was broken by the low hum of an approaching ship. Princess Zyra sat inside her small escape shuttle, staring at the radar screen. A single vessel was moving toward her location. Was this truly happening? A part of her still struggled to believe that out of the countless powerful civilizations she had pleaded with, only one human had responded. A lone man, without a fleet or army, had chosen to help her when entire governments had turned their backs. The ship came into view, a rugged but sturdy gunship, smaller than the massive war cruisers of the Valeri Empire, but heavily armed. It was an older model, patched with different metals, showing signs of battle damage. The markings on the side read, "The Black Star." Her console beeped, a message. "All right, Princess. Docking now." Zyra took a deep breath. There was no turning back. She pressed a few buttons, aligning her shuttle with the gunship's docking port. The hiss of decompressing air filled the cabin as the doors slid open. A figure stepped in. Ethan Graves, dressed in a dark utility jacket, combat boots, and a reinforced vest. Ethan carried himself like a man who had seen too many battles and lived to tell the tale. His sharp green eyes scanned the small shuttle before landing on Zyra. "Well, you look better than I expected for someone on the run," he said with a slight smirk. Zyra folded her arms. "And you look less impressive than I expected for someone taking on an empire." Ethan chuckled. "That's fair, but don't judge a fighter by his gear, Princess. I've taken down bigger threats than your uncle before." She studied him carefully. He didn't have the polished appearance of a royal officer or the cold precision of an assassin. But there was something in his eyes, confidence, experience, and the sharpness of a man who thrived in chaos. "You said you have a plan," she said. "How do we defeat Malachar without an army?" Ethan leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "First, we need allies. Your uncle may have taken over, but I'm guessing not everyone is happy about it. There have to be exiled warriors, rebels, or even mercenaries willing to fight back." Zyra nodded. "There are some survivors from the royal guard who escaped, but they are scattered, and they don't have ships or weapons." Ethan grinned. "Then we get them some. We start by raiding Malachar's supply lines." Zyra's eyes widened. "That's suicidal. His fleets control all trade routes." "Not all," Ethan corrected. "I know a few places the Valeri Empire doesn't pay attention to. The Shatter Zone." Zyra felt a chill at the name. The Shatter Zone was a lawless region at the edge of civilized space, home to exiled warlords, rogue AI, and mercenaries who had no loyalty to any government. It was a place where deals were made in blood and betrayal was a way of life. "You want to take us there?" she asked, skeptical. "It's our best shot," Ethan said. "If we go in carefully, we can find people willing to fight for the right price. And if we're lucky, we might steal some high-grade weapons from Malachar's secret operations." Zyra hesitated. She had spent her life in the structured, disciplined world of royal politics. This was chaos. Risky. Dangerous. But what choice did she have? She took a deep breath. "All right. Set a course for the Shatter Zone." Ethan grinned and walked back to the cockpit. Moments later, the Black Star roared to life, its engines flaring as it jumped into hyperspace. Hours later, entering the Shatter Zone. The moment they dropped out of hyperspace, Zyra saw the truth of Ethan's words. The Shatter Zone was chaos. Broken asteroid fields drifted around them, wreckage from ancient battles still floating in the void. Dozens of ships moved through the area, pirate cruisers, smuggler transports, and sleek mercenary gunships. Neon-colored lights flickered from hidden outposts built into asteroids where illegal trades took place. "Welcome to the Shatter Zone," Ethan said. "Not exactly a palace, but if you know how to play the game, you can survive." Zyra stared at the screens. "Who exactly are we looking for?" "A guy named Drexfair. Used to be a high-ranking officer in your empire before Malachar had him exiled. He's dangerous, but if we convince him, he'll bring a lot of firepower." Zyra's fingers tightened on the seat's armrest. And if he refuses? Ethan smirked. Then we make him an offer he can't refuse. The Black Star maneuvered toward a massive space station carved into an asteroid. As they approached, the station's turrets locked onto them. A rough, static-filled voice came through the speakers. Unidentified ship, state your purpose. Ethan pressed a button. Tell Drexfire that Ethan Graves is here. And I brought someone very interesting with me. There was silence. Then, after a few moments, the turrets powered down. The docking lights turned green. Docking Bay 3. Don't be late. Ethan glanced at Styra. Looks like we're expected. Time to meet your first potential ally. Zyra exhaled slowly. This was nothing like the world she had known. But if this was the path to reclaiming her home, then she would walk it. As the Black Star docked, she followed Ethan to the airlock. Her mind focused on one thought. This was just the beginning. The docking bay of the asteroid station was dark, lit only by flickering neon lights. The air smelled of burning fuel and metal, and the sound of distant shouting echoed through the tunnels. The place was alive with smugglers, mercenaries, and exiled warriors, all dangerous in their own way. Princess Zyra followed Ethan Graves down the ramp of the Black Star, her heart pounding. She had never stepped into a place like this before. The Valari royal halls were filled with discipline, honor, and elegance. But this place, it was chaos. Ethan, on the other hand, looked completely at ease. He walked like he belonged here, his sharp green eyes scanning the area for threats. Zyra forced herself to stay calm and kept her head high. If she was to win back her empire, she had to be strong. At the far end of the docking bay, a group of armed men stood waiting. They wore mismatched armor, their weapons holstered but ready. In the middle stood a tall, battle-worn man with gray skin, piercing red eyes, and deep scars running across his face. Drexfire, once a high-ranking general in the Valari Empire, he had been exiled when Regent Malachar took control. Now he was a mercenary leader, commanding a group of outlaws who operated in the lawless parts of space. Ethan Graves, Drex said, his voice rough like grinding metal. I thought you were dead. Ethan smirked. Not yet, but I appreciate the concern. Drex's red eyes shifted to Zyra, and his expression darkened. And you. I never thought I'd see a royal walking in filth like this. Zyra met his gaze without flinching. I don't have the luxury of a throne anymore. My uncle has taken everything. But you already know that, don't you? Drex's jaw tightened. I know Malachar is a tyrant. I know he exiled me and many others. But I also know that the Empire abandoned us. Now you come here, expecting us to fight for you. I'm asking you to fight for something greater. Zyra said firmly. Malachar is not just my enemy. He is a threat to everyone who values freedom. You may not care about me, but you care about revenge. And I can give you the chance to take it. Drex studied her for a long moment, then chuckled. You sound more like a soldier than a princess. Ethan crossed his arms. That's because she's serious. Look, Drex, we both know Malachar is a problem. He won't stop at ruling the Empire. He'll expand his reach until no one is safe. You have the men, and we have the plan. You help us, and we take back what's ours. Drex exhaled, glancing at his men. They were watching closely, waiting for his decision. Finally, he nodded. All right, I'm listening. What's the plan? The plan. Inside a dark meeting hall within the station, Ethan, Zyra, and Drex gathered around a holographic display of the Valari Prime shipyards, one of the most heavily guarded military facilities in the Empire. We can't fight Malachar head-on, Ethan said, pointing at the display. His fleet is too strong, but we don't need to fight them directly. We just need one thing, a warship. Zyra nodded. If we steal one of the Empire's dreadnoughts, we'll have a fighting chance. The people still loyal to my family will see that we are not powerless. They will rise up. Drex raised an eyebrow. You want to steal a dreadnought? That's insane. Ethan smirked. Maybe, but it's possible. The shipyards have security, but nothing we can't handle. We just need the right team. Drex leaned back. I have men who would die to take revenge on Malachar. If this works, we'll have the firepower to start a real war. Zira met his gaze. Then it's time to stop running and start fighting. Drex grinned. I like this side of you, Princess. Fine. I'm in. But if this plan fails, we all die. Ethan chuckled. Then let's make sure we don't fail. The chase. The meeting ended, and the team was set. They would strike the shipyards in 2 days. But before they could leave the Shatter Zone, trouble found them. As Ethan, Xyra, and Drex walked back toward the Black Star, an alarm rang out across the station. What now? Ethan muttered. A voice echoed through the speakers. Attention. A bounty has been placed on the fugitive Princess Xyra. A reward of 1 million credits for her capture, dead or alive. Xyra's blood ran cold. Your uncle works fast, Ethan said grimly. Suddenly, armed mercenaries appeared from the shadows, their weapons drawn. The station's smugglers and criminals turned their heads, greed flashing in their eyes. 1 million credits was enough to make anyone dangerous. Looks like we have company, Drex muttered, drawing his blaster. Ethan pulled out his own weapon. We need to get back to the ship. Fast. The first shot was fired, and chaos erupted. Blaster bolts zipped through the air as Ethan and Drex fired back, covering Xyra as she ran for the docking bay. Explosions shook the station as rival bounty hunters clashed, all trying to claim the prize. Go. Get to the Black Star, Ethan shouted. Xyra sprinted up the ramp of the ship, her heart pounding. Ethan and Drex followed, blasting down anyone who got too close. As soon as they were inside, Ethan slammed the hatch shut. Get us out of here, he yelled at the pilot droid. The engines roared to life, and the Black Star lifted off just as the station's security systems activated, trying to trap them. Ethan took the controls, weaving through asteroid debris and dodging incoming fire. Xyra held onto her seat as the ship shook violently. Are we going to make it? Ethan grinned. I never make promises, but I don't like losing. With a final burst of speed, the ship jumped into hyperspace, escaping just as enemy fighters closed in. Xyra exhaled, her hands shaking. She had just survived her first real battle, but she knew this was only the beginning. Now, they had allies. Now, they had a plan. And soon, they would take the fight to Malachar. The stars stretched into long streaks of light as the Black Star hurtled through hyperspace. Inside the cockpit, Ethan Graves adjusted the ship's course, while Princess Xyra and Drex studied the holographic display of their next target, the Vaylari Prime shipyards. This is madness, Drex muttered, his red eyes scanning the defenses on the display. The shipyard is one of the most heavily guarded locations in the Empire. If we get caught, we won't just die. We'll be executed publicly. Ethan smirked. Good thing we don't plan on getting caught. Xyra leaned forward, her silver-blue skin glowing faintly under the dim light. We don't have a choice. If we want to fight Malachar, we need a warship. This is the only way. Drex sighed. Fine, but tell me how we're supposed to sneak into a military base with no army. Ethan tapped a button, and the holographic display zoomed in on a small cargo route leading into the shipyard. This supply route is used by merchant freighters, Ethan explained. They bring in parts, fuel, and food for the workers. Security isn't as tight because the ships are scanned automatically by the station's systems. If we get inside one of these freighters, we can slip past the main defenses. Drex raised an eyebrow. And once we're inside, Xyra spoke up. Once we're inside, we head to the docking bays. There, we'll find the newest warships being prepared for battle. If we take control of one, we can escape before Malachar's forces realize what's happening. Drex crossed his arms. You make it sound simple. Ethan chuckled. It's never simple, but I've done worse. Zaira took a deep breath. Then let's get ready. We don't have much time. The heist begins. Hours later, the Black Star exited hyperspace near a massive gas giant, where a merchant freighter had stopped to refuel. It was an old, rust-covered transport vessel, large enough to carry supplies but small enough to avoid heavy security checks. "That's our way in," Ethan said. The plan was simple: sneak onto the freighter, hide inside its cargo hold, and let it carry them into the shipyard. Drex and his men suited up in stolen merchant uniforms, while Xyra and Ethan disguised themselves as cargo inspectors. With Drex's team posing as workers, they managed to sneak aboard without raising suspicion. As the freighter's engines roared to life, Xyra felt the familiar pull of acceleration. "We're in," Ethan whispered. "Now we wait." Inside enemy territory. Hours later, the freighter docked inside the Valari Prime shipyards. Through the narrow ventilation gaps, Xyra saw the massive station stretching before them. Hundreds of ships in various stages of construction, workers and engineers moving between them, and security patrols watching everything. The moment the cargo doors opened, Ethan and Drex led the team out, blending into the crowds. The disguise worked. No one paid them any attention. "All right," Ethan whispered through the comms. "We need to get to Docking Bay 17. That's where they keep the newly built dreadnoughts." Xyra nodded. "We need to move fast. The longer we stay, the greater the risk." Moving like trained operatives, they'd weaved through the station, avoiding cameras and patrols. Every second counted. Finally, they reached Docking Bay 17. Inside, a Valari dreadnought stood in its final construction phase. It was a monstrous warship, nearly a kilometer long, its dark silver hull gleaming under the lights. This ship, once completed, would have been added to Malakar's fleet, but now it would be theirs. Drex's men quickly overpowered a few guards, disabling security alarms before they could alert the rest of the station. Ethan sprinted toward the control panel. "I'm overriding the docking clamps." "Xyra, get to the bridge and start the launch sequence." Xyra nodded and ran inside, her heart pounding. The ship's corridors were empty. Most of the crew hadn't been assigned yet. She reached the command bridge and activated the ship's systems. "This is Princess Xyra of the Valari Empire," she said into the ship's interface. "Override security protocols. Confirm royal access." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the system beeped. "Royal access confirmed. Welcome, Princess Xyra." The screens came to life, and the engines hummed as they powered up. Xyra's fingers flew across the controls, preparing for takeoff. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the shipyard. "Unauthorized launch detected. Security teams, respond immediately." Ethan's voice came through the comms. "They know we're here. Xyra, get this thing moving. Drex, cover the docking doors." Drex's team took defensive positions, firing at incoming security forces. Xyra gritted her teeth, pushing the ship's thrusters to full power. "Hang on," she shouted. The dreadnought's engines roared to life as it began to rise from the docking platform. The clamps holding it in place snapped, and the massive warship lifted off. Outside, enemy fighters scrambled to stop them. "We got incoming," Drex yelled. Ethan ran to the weapon controls, activating the ship's defensive turrets. Laser cannons lit up the sky, blasting enemy ships before they could lock on. "Xyra, punch it," Ethan shouted. She slammed the hyperspace controls. The ship's navigation system struggled, calculating an escape route. Come on," she whispered. Enemy ships closed in. A massive cruiser moved to block their exit. "We're running out of time," Drex warned. The ship's systems beeped, coordinates locked. Xyra hit the final command. With a deafening boom, the dreadnought's engines fired, and the ship jumped into hyperspace, vanishing just as enemy missiles exploded behind them. The silence that followed was filled only with the hum of the ship's systems. They had done it. They had stolen a dreadnought from the heart of Malakar's empire. Ethan leaned back in his seat, breathing heavily. Well, that was fun. Zira exhaled, her hands shaking. We have our warship. Now we take the fight to Malakar. Drex grinned. He'll never see it coming. The battle for the Empire had just begun. The stolen Vaylari dreadnought shot through hyperspace like a silent predator. Inside, the ship's crew, once a ragtag band of mercenaries, exiles, and rebels, now moved with purpose. They had done the impossible. They had stolen a warship from the heart of Malakar's empire. But the real battle was still ahead. A new home. Princess Xyra stood on the bridge, staring at the endless stars outside. This ship, once meant to serve Malakar, was now hers. But a warship alone wasn't enough. They needed an army. Where are we heading? Ethan asked as he stepped up beside her. Xyra turned to him, her silver-blue eyes filled with determination. We need a base, somewhere safe to repair the ship and gather allies. Drex, leaning against the command console, nodded. I know a place, a hidden rebel station in the Calaris Nebula. Exiles, pirates, and mercenaries operate from there. If we're lucky, we'll find people willing to fight. Xyra clenched her fists. Then that's where we go. Arrival at the rebel stronghold. The Calaris Nebula was a swirling storm of blue and green gases, hiding countless asteroids and secret bases. As the dreadnought exited hyperspace, a small fleet of battered ships appeared on the scanners. They've spotted us, Ethan muttered. A transmission crackled through the ship's speakers. Unidentified warship, state your purpose or be destroyed. Drex stepped forward, his voice firm. This is Drexfair. Stand down. We're here to talk. There was a long silence. Then a new voice spoke. Drexfar, the exiled general. This should be interesting. You're cleared to dock. The massive warship slowly descended onto a hidden asteroid base, its landing struts groaning under its weight. As the ramp lowered, Xyra, Ethan, and Drex stepped out, greeted by a group of armed rebels. At the front stood a woman with cybernetic arms and sharp golden eyes. Drex, she said with a smirk. I thought you were dead. Seems a lot of people think that, Drex replied. Xyra, Ethan, this is Captain Saria Vale. She runs things here. Saria's gaze shifted to Xyra. And you must be the lost princess. You're making a lot of enemies, you know. Xyra met her gaze without fear. Malakar stole my empire. I plan to take it back, but I can't do it alone. I need soldiers, pilots, anyone willing to fight. Saria crossed her arms. And what do we get in return? Ethan stepped in. We have a warship. With the right crew, we can strike at Malakar's forces and give you something no one else has. A chance to fight back. Saria studied them for a moment, then grinned. All right, princess. Let's see if your cause is worth dying for. The growing rebellion. Over the next few days, the rebel station buzzed with activity. Engineers worked on repairing the dreadnought, while Drex and Saria's forces merged, forming a new rebel army. Xyra walked through the halls of the ship, watching as pilots trained and soldiers armed themselves. For the first time, she felt hope. Ethan approached her. You're building something real here. Xyra nodded. But we're still outnumbered. Malakar has an empire. We have a single ship. Drex joined them. Then we need to hit him where it hurts. A surprise attack. If we cripple his forces, we might turn the tide. Saria smirked. And I know the perfect target. Outpost Zenith. It's a supply station for Malakar's fleet. Take it out, and he'll feel the pain. Xyra's heart pounded. Then let's do it. We take the fight to Malakar. The mission begins. The stolen dreadnought launched from the rebel base, now fully armed and ready for battle. In the war room, a holographic map displayed Outpost Zenith, a heavily guarded space station supplying Malakar's fleet. We can't attack it directly, Ethan said. Their defenses would tear us apart. But if we disable their shields first, we can strike. Saria grinned. Leave that to me. My team will sneak in and take down their defenses. Once the shields are down, you bring the fire. Zyra looked around at her new allies. This was it, the first strike in their war against Malakar. Everyone, prepare for battle, she ordered. The crew moved swiftly. Fighters launched from the dreadnought's hangar, pilots ready for combat. In the distance, Outpost Zenith loomed, its bright lights glowing in the darkness. Ethan turned to Xyra, a smirk on his face. You ready for this, princess? She took a deep breath. I was born ready. As the ship roared toward the enemy station, the rebellion's first battle had begun. The stolen Vaylari dreadnought cut through the darkness of space, its powerful engines pushing it toward Outpost Zenith, one of Malakar's key supply stations. If they could destroy it, they would strike a devastating blow to the Empire. Princess Zyra, Ethan, and Drex stood in the war room, staring at the holographic projection of the station. Around them, pilots, engineers, and soldiers prepared for battle. Our fighters are in position, Ethan reported. Saria's team is ready to disable the shields. Drex folded his arms. We have one shot at this. If we fail, Malakar's forces will hunt us down. Zyra took a deep breath. Then we won't fail. Let's begin. The infiltration begins. On the far side of the station, a small transport ship drifted toward the docking bay. Inside, Saria and her squad of rebels wore stolen Vaylari uniforms, blending in with the real workers. Docking now, one of her men whispered. The transport landed smoothly inside the hangar, and the rebels stepped out, pushing supply crates like normal workers. Guards barely glanced at them. Remember, Saria whispered into her communicator, we find the shield generator and take it down. Fast and quiet. Moving quickly, they slipped into the maintenance corridors. The station's hallways were filled with engineers and soldiers, but Saria's team avoided attention. Finally, they'd reached the shield control room. We're here, Saria whispered. Stand by. She raised her weapon and signaled her team. The fight had begun. The battle begins. Back on the dreadnought, Cyrus' communicator crackled. Shields are down. Hit them now. Zyra didn't hesitate. All ships, attack, she commanded. The dreadnought's turrets roared to life, sending bright beams of energy toward the station. Fighter squadrons poured from the hangar, weaving through space like deadly shadows. Inside the enemy station, alarms blared. We're under attack. All units, defend the station. Enemy Vaylari fighters launched from their docks, engaging the rebellion's forces in a chaotic dogfight. Ethan sat at the weapons control, his fingers flying over the interface. The dreadnought's cannons fired nonstop, blasting enemy ships out of the sky. That's 3 down, he grinned. How many do I win if I get 10? Drex smirked. Your life. Now focus. Zyra stood firm on the bridge. This was her moment. Target their power cores, she ordered. If we disable them, the station will be useless. Inside the station, Saria's team fought their way out of the shield control room. Security forces flooded the corridors, firing relentlessly. Move, move, Saria shouted, blasting a guard out of her way. They reached the docking bay, where their transport ship waited. We need cover to escape, one of her men yelled. Before Saria could answer, a massive explosion rocked the station. The power cores were hit. That's our coup. Saria grinned. Get to the ship. Her team sprinted up the ramp as the engines roared to life. The transport shot out of the hangar, dodging enemy fire. We're clear, she reported. Vizira exhaled in relief. All ships, pull back. The station is finished, she ordered. The final blow. As the rebel fleet retreated, the dreadnought aimed its main cannon at the weakened station. Ethan smirked. Time to finish the job. He pressed the trigger. A blinding beam of energy erupted from the dreadnought's main gun, striking the center of Outpost Zenith. The station exploded in a massive fireball, sending debris flying into space. A cheer erupted on the bridge. "We did it," Drex said, clapping Ethan on the back. Zyra watched the destruction silently. This was just the beginning. Malachar would not ignore this attack. He would come for them. She turned to her crew. "We've won this battle," she said. "But the war is far from over. Prepare for Malachar's response." The rebellion had taken its first true victory. But the Empire would strike back harder than ever. The destroyed remains of Outpost Zenith floated in space, burning debris drifting like silent ghosts. The rebel fleet had escaped, but they all knew this victory came with a price. Malachar would not stay silent. Princess Zyra stood on the bridge of the stolen Velari dreadnought, watching the wreckage on the view screen. Her heart was steady, but she knew the real battle was still ahead. "We need to move," Drex said, his voice firm. "Malachar will send a response fleet. If we stay here, we die." Ethan, standing near the weapons console, sighed. "He's right. That was one of his key supply stations. He's going to be furious." Zyra nodded. "Set course for the rebel base. We need to regroup." The ship's engines roared to life as they jumped into hyperspace, leaving behind the ruins of their first true victory. Malachar's wrath. Deep inside the Velari Empire, Supreme Warlord Malachar sat on his throne of obsidian, watching the holo footage of Outpost Zenith's destruction. His golden eyes burned with rage. A stolen dreadnought, rebels, and the lost princess leading them, he murmured. A Velari commander stood before him, trembling. "My lord, we are already mobilizing our forces. The rebels cannot hide forever." Malachar stood, his armored cloak flowing behind him. "No, they cannot," he said coldly. "Send the fleet, burn their base to the ground, and bring the princess to me, alive." The Velari Armada, a fleet of warships, dreadnoughts, and hunters, moved out like a dark storm, heading toward the rebels' last known location. Rebel base under siege. Back at the Calaris Nebula, the rebels had barely begun celebrating when alarms blared across the base. "Incoming ships, it's the Empire," a soldier shouted. Saria ran to the control center, her face pale. "How did they find us so fast?" Drex clenched his fists. Malachar was waiting for this. He wanted us to think we were safe. Zyra looked at the holographic display. It was worse than she imagined. Dozens of warships were closing in, far more than their forces could handle. Ethan cursed. "We can't fight that many. What's the plan?" Zyra took a deep breath. She had led them into battle, and now she had to lead them out. "We evacuate," she said. "Get as many people as possible onto our dreadnought. We'll cover the retreat." The base shook as the first wave of enemy fire rained down, turning parts of the asteroid base into dust. "Move! Move!" Saria shouted, leading people toward the ships. Fighters launched, engaging the enemy fleet in chaotic dogfights, but the Velari forces were too strong. "Shields are failing," a rebel pilot called out. Zyra gritted her teeth. They were running out of time. The desperate escape. Inside the base, Ethan helped civilians onto transports. "Go, go, go," he yelled as engines roared to life. Above them, the dreadnought fired its heavy cannons, trying to hold off the enemy fleet, but it was outnumbered. Saria turned to Zyra. "This base is lost. If we don't leave now, we die here." Zyra hesitated for only a moment, then nodded. "Everyone, retreat to the dreadnought," she ordered. As the last of the rebels boarded, the stolen warship broke free from the asteroid belt, weaving through enemy fire. "We need a jump point," Drex shouted. Ethan scanned the map. "Nearest safe zone is the Syrian Rift, but we have to make it past their blockade." Zyra's eyes darkened. "Then we fight our way through, breaking the blockade." The dreadnought charged toward the Velari fleet, its shields flickering under heavy fire. "Hold on." Ethan shouted as he fired the main cannons, taking down an enemy cruiser. Enemy fighters swarmed them, blasting at their engines. "We can't take much more of this," Drex warned. Zara clenched her fists. They needed one final push. "All power to forward shields. Ram through their line," she commanded. The dreadnought's engines roared, pushing forward at full speed. The enemy ships fired desperately, but the massive warship smashed through the blockade, sending enemy vessels spinning. "We're clear," Saria shouted, jumping to hyperspace. "Now," Ethan yelled, pulling the lever. With a final burst of light, the Rebel warship vanished into hyperspace, escaping the Empire's clutches once again. A new beginning. When they emerged from hyperspace, the ship was damaged, but they were alive. Zyra looked around at her crew, Ethan, Drex, Saria, and the surviving rebels. They had lost their base, but not their cause. "Malachar will keep hunting us," Drex said. "Then we make sure he never catches us," Kyra replied. Ethan smirked. "What's the next move, Princess?" Zyra's eyes burned with determination. "We build an army, we find allies, and then we take the fight to Malachar himself." The war had only just begun.